On August 7th, 1994, dark clouds passed over the small town of Oakville, Washington, and something mysterious began falling from the sky. To this day, nobody knows for certain what it was, but it left dozens deathly ill in its wake. What were the Oakville Blobs, and how, or why, did they fall from the sky? Welcome back to episode number 19 of Super Mystery Bros, the show where we solve that which is said to be unsolvable. My name is Nate, and with me again tonight is Kyle. If you've noticed, we're back after only a week, and that's because Kyle is recently unemployed and has nothing better to do.
That's right. Nothing better to do but to contribute to the world's greatest podcast.
Yeah, man. So what can our listeners do to help us make this show grow?
Well, if our listeners want to make this show grow, they can take a tiny piece of it and put it in a petri dish and watch it blossom, or cover it in water and watch it grow like a chia pet. I'm just kidding. I'm just making these things up. No, you got to get out there. You got to spread the word. Get on your favorite social media apps, Facebook, Tinder, whatever you have. Let everybody know. Maybe we'll get some bumper stickers made. Maybe you can make your own bumper sticker. Make a big one. Put it on the back of your lifted Toyota Tundra or your Ford Raptor or Dodge T-Rex if you have 6 digits to spend on a truck. Must be nice.
Yeah, look, guys, as you know, this show, it's kind of like this really shittily made burnt house that some 9th grader made in his woodshop class. But with a fresh coat of paint, it could really be something. And your ratings and reviews can be like our proverbial coat of paint that other people can use to help find the show and help it reach a wider audience. And we get it. You don't have a lot of time. You're busy. And you've probably got severe problems that keep you up at night. You might be like us in your mid-30s and wondering where the fuck the last 15 years of your life went. Or you might be eating Fruity Pebbles by yourself in your kitchen. Or you might have some weird mole that you're too afraid to get checked out. But none of that matters. Believe me when I say that Kyle and I are going to be right there by your side in spirit form with a reassuring hand on your shoulder as you face your hopeless situation head on. But only if you open up your app and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And I don't want to go back to working at Sears, so please just help us out by leaving us a 5-star rating and review. And by telling your friends about us. All right, man, do you have anything that you want to say before we kind of get started on this one?
I don't think so. Let's rock and roll.
Oakville, Washington, aka Timbertown, USA. Centrally located along the west coast of the state, it's a humble little town located about 30 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean. A town that if you were driving through it, you better not blink or you're gonna miss it. Back when it was incorporated in 1905, its foundation rested upon the lumber and railway industries of the time. Today, it's considered to be basically in the middle of nowhere, with its most notable feature being a giant wooden carving of Sasquatch on East Pine Street, across the street from Oak Burger, which looks pretty good. Not a sponsor, but they can be if they want to reach out to us. According to the 2020 census, it has only 715 residents, so it's safe to assume that everybody knows everybody. A place so small that it would make Mayberry look like New York City. How would you describe this place, man?
Man, small town is like an understatement. I mean, it is teeny tiny. Like, I thought I knew what a small town looked like, but no, man, when your only main street that runs through your town is actually a US highway that just connects the other middle of nowhere towns, it's pretty tiny. Right. And like the entire perimeter of this town, I mean, the town stretches out maybe 10 blocks in every direction, and then you reach the end of the town.
And then it's just fucking woods.
Yeah. You know, Sasquatch territory.
Mystery for another day.
But in August of 1994, something sinister would fall from the sky and rain plague and devastation upon this quiet, unassuming community. As the dog days of summer were winding down on August 7th, 1994, dark clouds formed in the early morning hours and it began to rain. This was not unusual as the town sees rain for most of the year. This is the Pacific Northwest after all. However, as Officer David Lacey was out on patrol early that morning at 3 a.m., it became clear that this was not your everyday rain. As he turned his windshield wipers on, they just smeared a strange substance all over the windshield, so much so that he was having trouble seeing the road. He decided to pull into the local gas station to clean his windshield off to inspect what it was that was raining down from the sky. But as a precautionary measure, he decided to put on latex gloves before touching any of the substance. Smart move.
Quote, the substance, it was very mushy. It's almost like you had Jell-O in your hands. And, you could pretty much squish it through your fingers. We knew it wasn't something that we would normally see because we had never experienced it before. End quote, he told Unsolved Mysteries. By the time the sun came up that morning, the rain had ceased, and local residents began noticing the strange gooey substance which caked their homes and driveways. It was clear in color and described as gelatinous, with each piece being about the size of a grain of rice. When local elderly resident Dottie Hearn came out of her home that morning, she stepped out onto her front porch and noticed the strange goo and touched some of it with her bare hands, perplexed as to what it could be.
Quote, it looked like hail lying on top of the wood box and everywhere else, so I just went over and I touched it, and it wasn't hail, it was a gelatinous-like material, end quote. Both Dottie and Officer David Lacey would both fall very ill by the afternoon, as did most people in the town of Oakville. Officer Lacey described it as being, quote, violently sick, end quote, and being to the point where he could hardly breathe, and went on to say that it was an illness unlike any other that he had had. Dottie Hearn began to feel dizzy that afternoon and came down with extreme vertigo, vision problems, and nausea, and even started uncontrollably blowing chunks. Her daughter and son found her lying on the bathroom floor, sick as a dog.
Her daughter Sunny had the presence of mind to connect the strange gooey substance with the brutal illness of her mother and collected a sample of it to take with her to the hospital. Dottie spent 3 days in the hospital, but was only diagnosed with a severe ear infection. As for the substance, a lab technician at the hospital found that the substance contained human white blood cells, but as for what the substance was specifically, it could not be determined. The goo sample was then sent off to the Washington State Department of Health for further analysis.
Microbiologist Mike McDowell, the scientist who examined the sample, told Unsolved Mysteries, quote, it was very uniform. There was no structure that we could see visibly or with the microscope. I set it up on various microbiological media and attempted to isolate bacteria, end quote. Mike found that the sample had 2 species of bacteria, one of which comes from the human digestive system. A year after Dottie's illness, she took a sample of the goo that she had stored in the freezer and had it analyzed at a private laboratory.
Tim Davis, a microbiologist working at the lab, told Unsolved Mysteries, quote, I saw what I think was a eukaryotic cell, which is basically a cell that has a definable nucleus and is found present in most animals, end quote. Whatever the goo was, Tim Davis believes it to be biological. According to Sunny, a significant amount of military aircraft flew over the area prior to this happening, and according to Dottie, there were slow-flying bombers and helicopters, all black, going over them nearly every day. According to residents, military aircraft are a normal occurrence in the area, at least back in the 90s. One resident speculated that maybe they were test subjects for some kind of biological weapon.
All in all, the Blobs fell from the sky a total of 6 times in a 3-week period in 1994, causing dozens of residents to fall violently ill, and several dogs and cats died after contacting the substance, including Sunny's 8-week-old kitten. All samples of the mysterious, sinister goo are gone, making the task of figuring out exactly what it was nearly impossible. On the website factslegend.org, they ran an article about this story in 2015, mentioning many of the names and events that were featured in the Unsolved Mysteries episode with Robert Stack, which aired in 1997. As luck would have it, Sunny Barclift herself had responded to the article in the comments section of the page and wrote the following.
Quote, I am the Sunny Barclift you mentioned in the Oakville Blobs mystery. First of all, I am a woman, not a man. The Unsolved Mysteries segment on the Fallouts was probably the most accurate media piece done on the subject. Not all information was covered during the program, but what they did cover was correct. Osweiler did not find human white blood cells in the substance. That was done by a lab technician where my mother was hospitalized after coming in contact with the substance. I personally carried a sample of the gel to the hospital. Mike McDowell, the epidemiologist for the Washington State Health Lab, found 2 types of bacteria in the gel. Over time and after studying the substance, he concluded it was a man-made material and called it a matrix. It was, in his view, a material made for the express purpose of being a delivery method for something like viruses or bacteria. Oddly, the material was kept in a medium containment facility and disappeared. When he reported it to a supervisor, he was advised not to ask any questions. I have every reason to believe that the Fallouts, there were 6 of them in August of 1994, was a military exercise. I came across information about 2 years ago that led me to that conclusion. The notion that the blob-like gel came from jettisoned human waste from an airliner was dismissed by the FAA, as that material is dyed blue by regulations. The blobs were clear, no color. The idea that the blobs may have been remnants of jellyfish was ridiculous. The jellyfish would have had to be blown up into the jet stream, floated 50 miles inland, and over a period of 3 weeks fallen 6 times. It never made sense and still doesn't. My mother and I saw black military aircraft flying over her farm several months before the Fallouts, and they continued periodically for several months after. The aircraft was witnessed by many in the area, including a county councilman who I spoke with. He had also wondered about the aircraft as they flew over his farm as well. I do not know who originally posted the photo of the gelatinous material shown above, but you are correct, it is a fake. If you want to know anything else, please feel free to contact me. End quote.
After Sunny set the record straight, the writer of the article issued a retraction several days later, along with her full written story, which reads as follows, quote, It is my understanding that after the fallout, several people in the community did come down with a flu-like illness that lasted for 4 to 8 weeks in some cases. A couple that stick out in my mind were 2 individuals who had complications associated with kidney infection or kidney involvement, which I think is somewhat unusual. I did not go door to door and interview people as to the state of their health. Mostly the information gleaned was during casual conversations and overhearing statements made by others. I have no idea about what each person's personal diagnosis was. Communally, it was thought to be something like the flu. Some individuals, such as my mother Dottie Hearn and David Lacey, the police officer who had more acute symptoms. When my mother first found the substance on top of a box on the porch where she stored her wood for burning, she touched the substance with her bare hands. Although David Lacey said he wore gloves, he too became very ill within hours of contact with the substance. Initially, my mother was treated for Meniere's disease.
I forget how to pronounce that too, sorry.
Another weirdly spelt unpronounceable disease.
It's a disorder of the inner ear that she goes on to say.
A disorder of the inner ear. She had extreme vertigo, dizziness, and felt the room was spinning. Those are all symptoms of that disease. However, she also had a fever and other symptoms of infection. She spent 4 days in the hospital. Upon her release, I asked Dr. Little what her discharge diagnosis was. He shrugged his shoulders and said, quote, I don't know, some type of virus, end quote. She did have a complete recovery after she arrived home and over time. Meniere's disease usually manifests an ongoing problem, but she never had the symptoms again. It is interesting to note that my mother had a plethora of outdoor cats used as mousers in the barns and such. Gradually, over the following months, some of those cats also died or went missing. In time, the remaining cats were able to build up a healthy population again. Dr. Little was the attending physician on duty when my mother arrived by ambulance at McCleary Hospital. I had brought a sample of the substance to the hospital and explained to Dr. Little that less than 24 hours earlier, she had made contact with the substance, and since we didn't know what it was, would he be willing to do a lab test on it? He agreed and had a lab technician do a routine lab exam. That is when the white blood cell was found. Dr. Little was intrigued by, but was as baffled as we were. My best recollection is that the lab tech who conducted the test on the goo was known as Kelly. Once my mother had pointed out the substance to myself and my brother, we decided to wear gloves because it was an unknown substance. My background is in occupational safety and health, so I opted to wear gloves as a precaution. It is important to note that the gel-like substance was clear, no color at all, and about the size of rice grains, was literally everywhere. In the grass, on foliage, even on my truck window. We probably would not have noticed them, as they would have only appeared as drops of water had my mother not found them on the wood box. She initially thought they were hail. They were not liquid and had mass and were three-dimensional. I became mildly nauseated a week or so after the first fallout. I became acutely ill with severe bronchitis 6 weeks post the initial fallout. My kitten died on or around the third day of the fallout. It has been reported on some websites that the kitten had digestive problems prior to the fallout, but that is not true. Both of my mother's dogs fell ill 3 weeks after the first fallout. Nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. The vet said they had an infection and that they were treated with antibiotics. It is important to note at this point the fallout of gel was not a single occurrence, but instead was a series of 6 fallouts over 3 weeks. All were documented by my mother in her journal. There were rumors that some nearby farms experienced death of larger animals such as horses and cows. I did not investigate those allegations. I have no reason to dispute them, but they are hearsay. I was concerned about the material and spoke with Dr. Kobayashi at the Washington State Health Laboratory. He advised me to send a sample of the material. I mailed a sample to the Washington State Health Lab, which was assigned to Mike McDowell, one of their epidemiologists on staff. Mike initially set the gel up on bacterial media to see if it would grow anything. It grew 2 types of bacteria, Pseudomonas fluorescens and Enterobacter colici. Sure. The gel specimen was locked in a medium containment facility, and over time Mike continued to research it. At some point, he drew the conclusion that the material itself was man-made and was being used as a matrix, a vehicle capable of transporting a virus or bacteria. He did report his findings to his supervisor. When he returned to the lab at some point, he discovered the substance was missing. Again, he reported this to his supervisor and was advised at that point to not ask any questions. Mike is retired now and still does occasional interviews regarding the subject. I trust his judgment and his findings, as he was a credible expert in the field. Mike was interviewed 4 or 5 years ago on a program on the National Geographic Channel. The information about the substance missing was revealed in the program. I suspect he was reluctant to speak of it while still employed. He stated that it was the first time in 30 years of service with his job that a sample he was responsible for had gone missing. I was contacting as many agencies as possible to find assistance in identifying the substance. I took a sample to Mike Osweiler. Mike Osweiler worked for the Department of Ecology. The department concluded it was an organic material. They determined they did find a cell with a nucleus which indicated to them that it was biological. The cell could have been a bacteria. It was never specified. Over the years, I have held some information close to me. Very little about it has been released to the press. However, 2 years ago, some information surfaced on the internet that led me to the conclusion that the Oakville event was in fact a continuity exercise conducted by the military.
All right, so basically, Sunny and her mother, they were in town when the goo fell from the sky. Sunny's mother got violently sick. She got very sick, and The hospital technician, they analyzed a sample of the goo, and they found that there was some human white blood cells in it, which is weird. And then they had a private lab analyze the sample, and they found some bacteria in it. But they're still not sure what the fuck this is. Does that basically sum it up?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. They found this goo, had multiple people test it. Nothing was conclusive, and then the sample goes missing, and the guy in charge of this sample was told not to ask any questions about it.
Allegedly. Yeah. All right, so let's just sum up some of the most important bullet points and facts about it. So the goo fell over an area of around 20 square miles in the Oakville, Washington region. It fell from the sky 6 times over a period of 3 weeks. Symptoms of the illness that it caused ranged from extreme vertigo, nausea, blurred vision, and breathing problems to vomiting. Symptoms lasted much longer than a normal flu, up to 3 months in certain cases. Cats and dogs were reported to have died after coming into contact with the substance. Mike McDowell, the microbiologist we mentioned in the story, reported that there were 2 types of bacteria in the substance, one of which is native to the human digestive system. Tim Davis, the microbiologist from the private lab, believed the goo to be alive. And then despite the significance of the event and its widespread suffering that it caused, no known samples of the goo exist anymore. Anything that you would like to add to that, man?
Not really. I was just pondering Mike McDowell and Tim Davis. Mike McDowell says he sees 2 types of bacteria, and Tim Davis says it's biological, believes it to be alive, but isn't a bacteria an alive biological thing, or are those 2 different things?
I think he was talking about the goo itself was like something biological.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so let's just go over some of the most popular theories. So, number 1, the jellyfish theory. One common theory that circulates is that the substance may have been jellyfish. According to the U.S. Air Force itself, they were conducting bombing runs over the Pacific Ocean during this time, and some believe that a bomb may have made a direct hit on a cluster of jellyfish, which then blew them up and sent their guts flying all over Oakville. But there's going to be a few problems with this theory. One is that Oakville is about 30 miles away from the ocean at its closest point. 2, the substance, if it were jellyfish, would have made the entire town smell like a dumpster. And then 3, I personally am not a physicist, but it seems unlikely for any bomb short of a nuclear one to send jellyfish guts flying 50 miles away. Like, what were they doing? Dropping MOABs in the Pacific Ocean? I mean, I don't know, man. That sounds kind of far-fetched to me.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the U.S. Air Force denies any knowledge or involvement either in the creation or dispersal of the strange gelatinous substance. The local tavern in Oakville even serves a drink inspired by this theory called the Jellyfish, which is a mixture of vodka, gelatin, and juice.
Like a Jello shot? That sounds like a Jello shot.
That does, doesn't it?
Vodka, gelatin.
A glorified Jello shot, yeah.
Yeah. Another theory is the biological weapon theory. Perhaps one with the strongest leg to stand on asserts that the substance was some sort of biological weapon that was dropped on the town, either intentionally or accidentally. The implications for this would be massive, as these types of weapons have been banned internationally since post-World War I, and the ban was reinforced in both 1972 and 1993 by prohibiting their development, stockpiling, and transfer. Potential disease caused by biological weapons are not only dangerous, but highly contagious, and the effects would not be confined just to the location that they were tested on. It could easily spread out of control, especially if this is a test. You don't really know what it's going to do when it hits general population.
Yeah, exactly. There's no controlling it once it's deployed. So that's the main idea of why they're banned. So the next theory is I'm not saying it was aliens, but theory. Panspermia is a theory that life on Earth originated either in outer space or on some other planet. before somehow falling down to Earth and seeding it. Could the goo have been some sort of cosmic cum shot? Some believe that a meteorite may have fallen to Earth, spreading some sort of strange, unknown alien substance over the town. However, it is important to note that the substance rained down on the town 6 times over a 3-week period, making this theory far-fetched. And in a more sinister version of this theory, could this be where Giorgio Tsoukalos got his hair gel from?
Oh my god. Oh, where do you come up with this, man?
It's just written right here, man. I don't know. Who writes it?
Is panspermia a real thing?
Yeah, dude, it's a real thing.
Panspermia is the name of my new death metal band.
Well, there you go. Well, okay, so just to quickly explain what panspermia is, let's say life originated on Mars, for example, like a billion years ago, and a meteorite crashed into Mars and flung life out into space, and then some of that life floating out in space just landed on our pristine planet and basically seeded it with life. And then that's one theory as to how life started on Earth.
Yeah, I got that. I just didn't realize that there was like a technical name for it.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, and that technical name has sperm in the middle of it. But makes sense.
Yeah.
Another theory about where this goo could have come from, aside from Giorgio Tsoukalos' hair gel, the Boeing bomb theory. If you guys have ever seen Joe Dirt, you'll know that a Boeing bomb is poop that falls out of a jetliner. You know, human waste that jet airliners will just eject sometimes over land. It could explain the illness and the human white blood cells found in the material. But according to FAA regulation, all human waste from commercial airliners is dyed blue in color, and the goo in question was described as crystal clear in color. Furthermore, releasing this material mid-flight is strictly prohibited by law. You know, but you know, people break the rules, and also that's, you know, I don't know. It says for commercial airliners, is that the same on like a private jet? I mean, like I wouldn't know. I'm not a gajillionaire.
It is.
All right.
It is. That's FAA. That's all aircraft. But to me, even if the material wasn't dyed blue, either by like some mistake or just malicious intent, I don't think that if it just started raining doo-doo butter, that it would be crystal clear in color. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and like not stink, you know? Unless,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Unless we're testing out some sort of like airliner poop cleaning facility, like some sort of desalinization system you can put in an airliner so you can just dump the poop out wherever.
I don't know about that. I think we would have seen it. This was 30 years ago. If they had that kind of technology, I think it would have.
Well, maybe they would have
seen it by now.
Well, maybe they scrapped it because it got everybody sick.
All right, fine, man. All right, so that brings us to the end of our story here. This was kind of a short one today. Kyle, I want to know what your initial thoughts are on this theory.
I don't know, man.
Like, where do you think that? I know this is a really hard one. So I just want to know where you lean.
I think it is military or government related. You know, despite testing biological weapons and things on general population, you know, despite that being all banned by Geneva and everything else, this is America. You know, our government's going to do whatever the fuck it wants, whenever the fuck it wants, you know, and if they want to test a new biological, maybe not weapon, but maybe like delivery system, which is what this sounds like it could have been, was a bacteria delivery system, and just put something, you know, a flu-like bacteria that kind of got out of hand. But it's a teeny tiny town that's like only a couple of square miles big and in the middle of nowhere. So maybe if it did break out and infect the entire town, maybe it would be a little more contained. And this is also in a time, you know, before smartphones. I mean, like, what was this, 94? So the internet is a thing, but internet in the home is not a thing yet. And definitely you don't have internet in your pockets to just start spreading word like, oh shit, check out what's falling on my tiny town. And then everyone runs to your town to see what the fuck it is. I think it's a, it's a very
So you
isolated
think this was something
spot.
intentional?
I do. I think the government or military intentionally dropped a test delivery system of a biological weapon on this tiny town because it was about as, condensed as you can get it. Plus, it's the Pacific Northwest, so it rains like 2 out of every 3 days on average,
Does that basically sum up how you feel about this one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so man, I went down a fucking rabbit hole last night, and so I wanted to talk about what my initial theory was so that I can describe how it led up to my final theory. So my initial theory was that like maybe the CIA or some other government actor, they were doing some sort of experiment with the weather by dropping some kind of a weird substance into the clouds, but then it didn't work and ended up just poisoning the town of Oakville. And there's kind of precedent for this. So back in the Vietnam War, the CIA actually launched something called Operation Popeye. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So this was an operation to spray silver iodide into cloud formations that were over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And the purpose of it was to extend the monsoon season by forcing certain clouds to just start dumping more rain than they normally would have. So it would just cause condensation in the cloud, and then it would just start pissing down rain in whatever cloud that they dumped this silver iodide in. So the idea of this was to basically slow down the NVA as they were moving troops and equipment down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And it was actually successful. And their motto, which I thought was kind of funny, is make mud, not war. So what they would do is they would fly out of Thailand, out of a Thai airbase, a C-130 packed with just a shitload of this silver iodide spray, and they would just start spraying it into all these clouds, and then it would just start pissing down rain all over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So that was the idea, is just to flood out the Ho Chi Minh Trail, cause a ton of mud, and just make it a logistical nightmare for them to start moving troops and equipment down into South Vietnam.
Can I stop you really quick?
Yeah, what's up?
I was just thinking, if the silver iodide cloud seeding thing actually works to create rain, why aren't we doing that in Southern California, where we're dealing with drought 4 out of 5 years in a row?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. It might have to do with like the fucking EPA or something. I don't know.
Goddamn EPA. Okay, continue. Thank you.
God damn it. All right, so God damn it, you interrupted me, man. All right, so I was thinking that this could have been some sort of government experiment, but then, it was like a gelatinous substance. So I don't think that that's what this was, because I don't think they would spray a gelatinous substance into a cloud, because of course it's just going to fucking fall to the ground. It's not going to be like a spray, like silver iodide. So here's where it kind of gets interesting for me, because I think that I think I might have solved this mystery. Or at least I think I'm onto something really strong here. And I haven't seen anybody else talk about this.
All right. Well, enough with the suspense. Hit me with it.
All right. So out in Spokane, Washington, which is in the eastern portion of the state, they were flying B-52s and KC-135 Stratotankers at the time. And as it so happens, just about a month before this incident happened, the 92nd Bomb Wing at Fairchild Air Force Base was redesignated to the 92nd Air Refueling Wing. So essentially, this base switched from being a bomber base to an aerial refueling base. So I think that this could explain why a lot of residents may have seen increased Air Force activity in the area, because certain aircraft might have been like shuffling around,
Yeah.
And I'm not sure which routes these aircraft would have taken, since it's kind of on the other side of the state. But I think that it's possible that the increased traffic over Oakville wasn't a coincidence. But
that definitely makes sense. Yeah. Because you would be getting the bombers off the base and bringing tankers in. And to the untrained eye, you wouldn't know the difference between a bomber and a tanker.
Yeah, so, just a few weeks prior to the Blobs raining down, Fairchild Air Force Base was transferred from the Air Combat Command to the Air Mobility Command. So basically, by this time, the B-52s would have been gone or mostly gone, and then the KC-135 Stratotankers would have been the main aircraft that remained there. And then also, there is another Air Force Base in Tacoma, Washington, called McChord Air Force Base, which this is only 40 miles away from Oakville. And back in the 90s, they were flying big cargo aircraft out of there, C-17s, and I believe the C-141s as well. And so this led me down like a giant research rabbit hole, because where my mind went here was, I thought that this might have been some type of like air refueling that was being done over this area as part of like some sort of like training exercise or something like that. But then I found some information on something called apple jelly, which is a fuel contaminant that it can come in various different colors. It's usually a dark brown color, but it can come in different colors, like even crystal clear, like what was described here. And like both thick and thin viscosities. And then up until recently meaning like 20 years ago, nobody really knew what caused it specifically, except that water being present in the fuel tank was a prerequisite for it. And then about 20 years ago, they finally figured out what was causing it, and it was this anti-icing fuel additive called diethylene glycol methyl ether. And then from my research, most of it, this apple jelly shit is like a reddish brown in color, but apparently some of it was being reported as being like a clear whitish color, which would be consistent with the Oakville blobs. And then I stumbled upon this like giant PDF that was released by the military, which was talking about apple jelly. And then according to them, the coloration of it can be determined by the water content of it. So like the apple jelly with a higher concentration of water in it would have a clear coloration. And then the stuff with less water was more of a brownish red color. And I'm going to put the PDF in the source notes for this episode. So it begins with water and diethylene glycol methyl ether. The mixture, it reacts with its environment, and it sort of extracts and dissolves compounds from contaminants that it comes in contact with. So, when it all comes together, it forms this jelly-like substance that they dub apple jelly. And I want to just like put a disclaimer out there that I'm not a chemist, so I'm not speaking from a place of expertise on this. But believe it or not, bacteria does grow in jet fuel, along with yeasts and fungi, when water finds its way inside of a fuel tank, which is a prerequisite for this so-called apple jelly to form. So this would make perfect sense that this apple jelly could also be full of bacteria, which could easily make people sick. So what does this all mean in a nutshell here? Like, what I'm saying is that I think that there was some sort of there might have been like an aerial refueling mission happening somewhere over Oakville. It might have been a KC-135, which was contaminated with this apple jelly shit. And I guess it didn't have to be a KC-135. It could have been any of these aircraft, these giant. It could have been a B-52, a KC-135, C-17.
Because
any of these giant.
Everything that flies for the military, or just about anything that runs on jet fuel, has this additive in case water or any contaminants form in the tank.
Well,
right?
Well, no. So this additive that I was talking about, this is like an anti-icing agent. So this is to prevent the fuel from freezing.
Oh.
So that's what this is. So it's just a weird chemical that sometimes reacts with water when water is present.
I see.
Yeah. Yes. So what I think is that there was some big aircraft, either B-52, C-17, KC-135, something like that. It was it was flying over Oakville, and here, this is my hypothesis. All right, how do I explain this? All right, so maximum takeoff weight versus maximum landing weight. So when you have these really big aircraft, the maximum takeoff weight is higher than the maximum landing weight. So the planes are always going to take off heavier than they will be when they land. Makes sense? I mean, you're burning fuel, so of course that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It does make sense. You know, even if you're not carrying bombs or cargo or anything, yes, you will burn fuel, you know, presumably gallons of it, even on like the shortest of training flights. So yeah, yes, you would be lighter when you land.
Exactly. So this is what I think happened. There was some big plane that took off either from McCord or from Fairchild. It was flying somewhere in the region of Oakville when it had to turn back and head back to base. Whether that's like an emergency happened, like a mechanical problem, maybe. Oh shit, we got to turn back. And it was loaded. It was loaded either with bombs or with a lot of fuel to, for like a really long journey, right?
Yeah.
And so they needed to get their plane to under the maximum landing weight.
Right.
And so to do that, they have to dump fuel to get to that. If they're overloaded with bombs or cargo,
you can't
fuel,
just dump,
they've got to offload some of that.
Yeah, you can't just dump bombs over a fucking neighborhood.
Well, exactly right. And plus, bombs are going to be more expensive than the fuel. So yeah, that's what I think happened. So this plane was in the area. It had to dump fuel before returning back to base. And they so happened to be over Oakville, Washington when they did it. And I think some of this apple jelly was in that fuel that was dumped. And so it just spread out all over. Okay, so when a plane dumps fuel, jet fuel, at a high altitude, none of that is going to reach the surface without being vaporized first. So it spreads out. It basically turns into vapor as it dumps out into the atmosphere. So anyone on the ground, they're not even going to notice a difference. So it's not going to dump like a bucket of water onto the floor, you know?
Yeah.
It's just going to spray out kind of like an aerosol or something. And then as this shit is just being shitted out of the airplane, it's spraying this apple jelly everywhere as well. And I think that that's what these blobs were. I think that this was apple jelly that came from a military aircraft. And it would make sense that some of these people might have gotten sick if God knows what kind of contaminants would have been in this apple jelly shit.
Yeah.
What kind of bacteria or viruses existed inside of it. But yeah, I think that's what it was and what was making people sick, what was killing animals. And I do kind of believe the Air Force when they say that when they denied responsibility or knowledge of what this was. I think that nobody knew who was responsible for this. They're like, because back then it didn't seem like they had a clear understanding of what this apple jelly shit even was.
Yeah.
So,
well, that makes sense because the way you described it sounds like the apple jelly is the additive. It's a de-icing.
It's not an additive. No, that unpronounceable chemical is the additive to the fuel.
Well, yeah.
And then the apple jelly forms when it comes into contact with water.
With water. So there doesn't even need to be apple jelly present in the tanks when it dumps. It dumps. The problem is that they didn't understand it fully how it formed until about 20 years later. The only thing that they knew was that water coming into contact with that chemical was one of the prerequisites. Yeah.
But it's not the only thing. It's not like you add water to it and then it makes apple jelly. It's just, they just know that water being present was one of the prerequisites for the formation of this shit.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that, yeah, they dumped their fuel as they were heading back to base because they had to lighten their load because the maximum landing weight is lower than the maximum takeoff weight, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they turn back, head back to base, and dump some of their fuel to do that.
All right. Well, it's a very sound theory, man, and bravo for chasing down all that research to discover apple jelly and this jet fuel additive and everything else to put that together. One thing, right? The
Yeah.
one hole I smell in your theory. This stuff came down 6 times in 3 weeks, right? So
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, I thought about this too, and Oakville could have been just the place for them to dump fuel on their way back to whatever base they were heading back during that time. The spot to dump fuel, because they're not going to dump this over a highly populated area.
Yeah.
They probably had like designated areas for dumping fuel, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think that the area around Oakville was probably the spot to do this.
yeah, and with weird
And then
wet weather patterns and rain almost every day, that dumping could just be pushed around miles at a time, But
Yeah.
Man, it's a lot of fuel dumping on a regular basis. Do you think that there's any chance that dumping the fuel in the sky one time could cause this to happen a few times, 6 times over a 3-week period? Like every time the rain comes around, the fucking apple jelly shows up. Okay.
No, I think that they were all separate instances, and it could have been from the same contaminated aircraft or the same contaminated fuel tank where the fuel for these aircraft were coming from. Do you get what I'm saying?
Or maybe that's how long it took for word of sick residents to get back to the airbase and them to maybe put it together. And maybe it was them dumping the fuel, caused them to get sick.
Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. Like, no,
maybe.
Yeah. But no,
but I mean, they think, but the thing is, people were getting sick and they were finding these bacteria in it and these so-called human white blood cells in it. So like, there's no way this could just be some shit that came out of an airplane fuel tank.
Yeah.
But as I said before, bacteria can grow inside of jet fuel tanks. So I think it's no surprise that there could be some crazy shit growing inside of this gel.
That is mind-boggling to me, to think that bacteria could grow in any kind of fuel at all. But I know that you do have training in flying, so I do, I believe you when you say anything that's, basically anything that's aviation related.
That was a long time ago, man, and yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in this. It was just, when I was younger, I was really into this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, this is the only theory to me. I mean, when I stumbled upon this last night, when I was getting ready to record this episode today, I was stoked because I feel like I might have really solved this mystery for real.
Yeah.
I hope somebody out there who is more of an expert than I am can piece this all together and let me know if I'm right or wrong about anything that I said, because it was checking off all the boxes. One, it can be full of bacteria. It can be crystal clear. It can be in many different viscosities. You look at some pictures of it, it's like this dark brownish red, almost like a honey colored.
Yeah.
Or it can be like a clear whitish color as well. I think that's what this was, man. I really do.
Yeah. Well, once again, man, bravo for chasing down all that research and coming up with a super solid theory, more solid than really anything else that's on here, So
yeah,
my hat is off to you, sir. And to all of our listeners that have made it to the end of the episode, if you know of anyone who'd be interested in chasing down this lead, let them know, man. Get the word out. Maybe we will have solved this unsolved mystery.
Yeah, and just give me credit for at least coming up with the idea in the first place.
I'll give you 1,000% credit.
All I ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I don't think so, man. Just, great job. Great job. I'm really impressed, really stoked that you came up with a solid theory that was nowhere to be found on the internet, all on your own, dude. I'm super proud of you.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right, man. Do you have any shout outs, apologies, or clarifications you'd like to make?
Shout out. I would like to give a shout out to the Stranglers Collective. It is an artist collective in San Diego, California. They are having a big art show 1 week from today, Saturday, September 16th at the Downstairs SD. If you live in the San Diego area and are interested in seeing some very intense, dark, grotesque art, hit us up at our email, supermysterybrospodcast@gmail.com. And we'll let you know where it is and what time it is. It's totally free. Come on down, check it out. The Stranglers Collective will be there in force, and it'll be a great show.
Yeah, and Kyle will be there to sign autographs. So, bring your books and copies of your, I don't know, just anything.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so today I just want to give an apology to Giorgio Tsoukalos because I've given him a hard time about his choice of hair gel for the second time here on this podcast. So
I'm
I
sure
think he
you're not
deserves
the
an
only
apology.
one. You're not the only one to give him a hard time about his hair.
Yeah, I feel bad. And I just want to say that there's no actual evidence that he uses alien jizz for hair gel. So I just want to make it clear that the claim is alleged, not confirmed.
It's another pretty solid theory, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right, man, I think it's time to get out of here. Like sands through the hourglass, so too are the minutes of our podcast. But don't fret, dear listener. We'll be back again to breathe new life into an old mystery next time.
Remember, folks, the truth is out there, somewhere in the ether. And through our powers combined, we'll solve that sumbitch once and for all.
This is Super Mystery Bros. And stop.
Stop. Good job, dude. Fuck yeah.
Thanks.
That's
I am almost positive that that's what this is. And before I wrote this down, I was like, did anyone else think of this? And I searched for Oakville Blobs apple jelly. Nothing.
Yeah. No, dude, fucking great fucking job, dude. No, I'm blown away, dude. That you piece all together. It sounds super solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why I was really excited to do this one, because I really felt like I stumbled on something that nobody else had.
Yeah. I could tell, I was kind of like bummed, because I was sick and I just was looking at my phone, and I look and just fucking 18 emails from Nate. You're like, I'm super stoked to do this one. And it's like, let's fucking do it. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. Yeah. And now I know why, man. No, that was amazing, man. Great job. That's some solid fucking investigative work, dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there is a good to fair chance that you have solved one of the unsolved mysteries. You're a fucking regular Robert Stack, man. Yeah. No, it all makes sense. It all fucking adds up.